The arrival of the New Yorker Susan Sarandon to Cartagena, Colombia as guest of honor to the International Film Festival caused a commotion. Susan is one of the most important and beloved actresses of Hollywood. She won an Oscar as Best Actress for the film Dead Man Walking. The people of Cartagena, filmmakers, tourists, and journalists were excited and grateful for the presence of Susan at the film festival. The star arrived to the city known as Corralito de Piedra without ostentation or diva demands. She only asked to be allowed to visit every corner of the Cartagena city known by the people as the heroic city. She fell in love with Cartagena and always spoke of it with great admiration.
Hello, Susan. Colombia adore you.
So happy to be here.
Okay.
En esta noche tan especial quiero dar las gracias a quienes las hacen posibles, a Cine Colombia y a la Embajada de Estados Unidos y por supuesto a nuestros socios principales, a la organización Ardila Luli. Bueno, para nosotros es más que una dicha realmente poder tener este invitado de honor que nos acompaña esta noche, una actriz gigante con uno de los registros más potentes y versátiles de la industria cinematográfica, pero además un ser humano extraordinario, generoso y cálido que ha llevado la idea de la diva hacia otro lugar, a otro lugar donde el rol de las estrellas cumple otras funciones. Una activista comprometida, una profesional impecable y una mujer que brilla con luz propia. Démosle la bienvenida, por favor, a la señora. Y para acompañar esta gran oportunidad y esta linda charla, nos acompaña esta noche el señor Alejandro Santos de la revista Semana, por favor.
Good night, Susan. It's a great pleasure to have you here with us, and you are some of those actresses that inspire not only Hollywood but people around the world, including Colombia. You have a great career. You won so many awards around the world, including an Oscar, the Academy for your role in Dead Man Walking. But you have an impact in many other areas, political, human rights issues. My first question, Susan, is: do you think the role of an actress is only being a good actress, or do you believe a good actress should have a political and a social role in society?
You know, I'm very lucky because this job is all about imagination. And if you can imagine something, if you can imagine what it would be like to be a mother sending her child off to war, then you develop empathy. And acting is all about listening and being open, and if you have empathy, then it's almost enforced compassion. So it's more of a mystery to me how people who are in this business aren't somehow active as citizens of the world, as citizens of their country, because you're identifying with people all the time in other places and with what's going on with them. And I don't really differentiate between what I do for a living and my life. I think that being a mother has been one of the most demanding jobs in terms of stamina and imagination and creativity. And I think that my job also helps me listen really well to people and have an open heart. And so all of those things, there's a fluidity between life and, I hate to use the word art, but whatever my job is. And then, you know, the natural flow of that is to ask questions. And unfortunately, sometimes in the United States, asking questions tends to isolate you, tends to take you away from the tribe and be labeled political. And as you know, this is a particularly surreal time in the United States in terms of what's going on politically. And I don't know where the journalists have gone to, because we really don't have very many responsible journalists, and television has become so important. And so people aren't getting information to make educated decisions. So if you are someone who's connected to the media in a job like mine, you have the, I think, responsibility and the availability of being kind of a little flashlight to help people get information that they're not getting. And that's often called political, but you know, I think every film either challenges the status quo or reinforces it. And so when you're making films, you're either enforcing sexism, racism, ageism, or you're challenging it. I think that we're in a time of transition, and we're trying to find out America seems to be craving authenticity. It's drawn on one side to this guy, Trump. Because people feel that he's definitely outside of the system and outside of reality and outside of everything. And then there's Bernie Sanders, who I agree with you completely, who also came up without taking money from anyone, without being associated with any of the organizations that are ruining the environment and that are, you know, fracking, Monsanto, all of that. And so people gravitate towards him because they sense that he's a chance to be authentic and to change the status quo into something different. And so, but the problem is that the press, you know, was really drawn to the clown and not information. And so they've not covered Bernie Sanders very well. Up until he demanded it recently, or till the people demanded it. But to get back to your question, I think that what's happening now is there's a question of authenticity, as opposed to the idea of ourselves that has been developed through reality TV almost. You know, kind of what's happened also online with so many friends and liking or swiping or, you know, everything that's happened that has given us a false sense of connection, and really what everybody craves is connection. And so I think people are starting to want to actually connect, not just give the idea of connecting, you know, and that's being shown politically. So I don't know what question I ask myself. Where am I?
Myself. Susan, you have been an anti-war activist. You advocate against the death penalty. You recently endorsed the Bernie Sanders campaign, the presidential campaign. Don't you think that those positions and so many others you stand for, sometimes controversial, will affect your career as an actress, or you think that's completely independent?
But I think that's a little bit like worrying if your slip is showing when you're fleeing a burning building. I don't think you think about those things. You know, you can't start to think about those things because then you're not free to be true to yourself.
And how movie industry and Hollywood in particular can help stimulate political change or strengthen social issues. For instance, knowing the huge challenge the world is trying to preserve our planet, should Hollywood be more active or play a bigger political role in climate change? For instance, to this, try to understand what really is happening right now and what we're facing for the next 50 years. What's the role of Hollywood?
Well, the good news and the bad news is that Hollywood is not political. It never has been political. There are some people in Hollywood who make, for instance, documentaries. There's an amazing amount of documentaries, and people are more interested now in documentaries, and they're becoming better than some movies. When you see The Act of Killing, for instance, that's an extraordinary film that doesn't even seem like a documentary. So I think that a lot of change can happen through giving information in documentaries, and I think sometimes Dead Man Walking started a real conversation, a dialogue about the death penalty and the specifics of the death penalty, and I think sometimes you can do that, but I think that The Nutty Professor is a very political film, because it makes you want her to be with that fat guy, and it makes you put yourself in the part of that guy that you've never identified with. So I think in terms of climate change, sometimes, you know, it's very difficult to make a film that's about a problem that's environmental, whatever, the death penalty, whatever, and make it a compelling movie. Dead Man Walking was really a love story and a story of redemption with the background of the death penalty. And that's what I think pulled you into that. But so it's much harder to write a script and to make a movie that's a good movie and entertaining when it's an issue film. But I think that also a lot of people, I mean, Leonardo DiCaprio just spoke about, you know, choosing a candidate that didn't support fracking when he gave his speech, and I think a lot of these people can bring attention to issues, and I think that's great, because usually the people that don't have a voice need a voice. And, you know, the refugees that are pouring in all over the place in Europe, they have no voice. And so anytime that you can tell their stories, and that's what we do, is tell stories, and show their faces, you take people and when you reduce people to a concept and take away their humanity whenever there's an issue involved, that's a form of violence. So you know, whenever you can tell a story that makes people human again, that's really important, and Hollywood can do that, can give you. But I think really the most wonderful stories are ones which are love stories. Every movie I've ever done has been a love story, and ones that encourage people to be the protagonist in their own lives. And if they're the protagonist in their own life, then that will mean that they'll notice the environment when it's being raped, and they'll speak up and they'll ask questions and they'll get involved.
Susan, gentle, simple and generous, but safe and wise, answered questions, most with reference to politics, that were formulated almost stiffly by journalist Alejandro Santos, director of Semana magazine, whom the diva kindly warned that Hollywood is not political. Although the versatile actress, well known for her political activism, suggested between the lines a spontaneous and less exhausting dialogue, answered without rigor, showing herself a supporter of the peace process in Colombia and disagreeing with the approach of Donald Trump. She also flattered her job because it allows her to have a social and responsible role as an artist and activist in the society.